Good evening. I'm Socratess Garrett, and we're broadcasting live from right here in Jackson, Mississippi, the heart of the Deep South, right here in the African-American-owned broadcasting studio. We believe digital.com, our own platform. And so it's critically important that in the African-American community, we control the narrative. I look forward to receiving opportunities to show and advertise your products for goods and services and to move your brand along in this community. We're broadcasting live on Facebook. When We Believe Digital Podcast, go to Roku and download our app, and We Believe Global, with shows like this to bring articulate, intelligent conversations and dialogue to our platform. So I'm here to continue sounding the alarm. This is how the South is going to rise again. Good evening, and welcome to Socratess Garrett Live. We're broadcasting live from right here in Jackson, Mississippi. Mississippi, my hometown. Mississippi with a population of less than 3 million people. As I often say when I travel around the world, you know, when I was in Chicago, for example, I could not turn without bumping into someone. It was kind of frightening and it was uncomfortable. In Mississippi, I can go for days and days and days and not see anyone. There are still parts of Mississippi that no man has ever traveled. You know, I'm reminded of my grandfather who lived off of the Natchez Trace down on the Pearl River. When it rained down there, you couldn't get in there for weeks at a time. So black folk had to have the ability to take care of themselves and to provide all of their needs for months at a time, just because of the weather. And some naturally couldn't get out of there because they had no transportation. And the transportation in that day would have been a mule and a sled or a wagon. Those were the ideal modes of transportation. If you were fortunate enough and lucky enough to get a rubber tire wagon, then you were considered to be in the middle class, or you were doing better than most people, whether it was black or white. You just didn't have that. I remember that my father had to had to buy a wagon just to get the tires off of it to go on his car. And that's because rubber was an all-time scarce item right after the war. And so those of us in Mississippi have come a long ways. We've seen a lot of things. And the more we see today, we're reminded on actually how good it was back in those days. While we didn't have a lot of money or didn't consider ourselves poor. You couldn't be poor when you have a garden that's full of food, and you have a smokehouse that's full of meat, and you have your rifle and your shotgun and your fishing rod, and you could go out at any time that you like and prepare yourself a meal. Now, things have changed a lot. We don't know much about how to do that, and I'm amazed now that even the animals have changed. You know, I could go for months without seeing a squirrel in the woods, and I stayed in the woods a lot because my father ran a sawmill. And so we cut lumber and we cut timber, and we were always in the woods. Now, let me tell you, it gets hot in the woods. You think it's hot out here now, but this concrete jungle that we're in naturally puts off a certain amount of heat. But in those woods, when you could not even feel the wind blowing, it was tremendously hot. And in the summertime, in the wintertime, it was extremely cold. I recall on many days that my father would be working so hard and there would be ice on the ground, and he wouldn't have on anything but his jumpsuit. He would take most of his clothes off and would be perspiring and sweat running down his back, and it'd be ice on the ground. That's how hard men worked. coming through that period of time. He used to tell me when I told him I was cold, he would say, if you would just go to work, you wouldn't be cold. I guarantee you, if you go to work, you won't be cold. And so many of these lessons are not being taught today in Mississippi. You know, we sometimes have made it in our minds and we moved up to a spot and a place in time where we don't have to go to the woods, we don't have to go to the field, and the animals don't fear us. You know, it's like I have to stop my car now to watch the ducks and the geese walk by. They don't even get out of the road. You couldn't have imagined a duck being anywhere near me as a boy. It would have been suicidal on his part. And now they make you so angry. I recall the story on the reservoir when the man got tired of the ducks and coming up and messing up his patio, just messing up all of the environment around there. He got so mad at them until he caught one or two of them and threw them in the incinerator. And I think they gave him a few days in jail because you can't treat the animals that way. Well, yes, you can. You know, we were brought up that the best way to get an animal to do what you want him to do is to, first of all, you got to get his attention. And how do you get his attention? You get his attention by taking a 2x4 and hitting him right between his ears and the top of his head at the beginning of the day, and then he would understand that who was going to be in charge for the rest of the day. And don't think it didn't make a difference. You know, I could be struggling with a pair of mules trying to get them to do the right thing. My father would come out in the near vicinity, and you would hear his footsteps, and the mule's ears would perk straight up in the air, and they became immediately obedient. Whereas I was struggling, he didn't have any struggle with them at all. He asked me one question. I was telling him that I was having difficulty getting these mules to pull this log. He looked at me and he said, I want to know two things. And I said, what's that? He said, I want to know, did you feed them? Did you feed both of them? I said, yes, I did. He said, well, hand me the lines. He whistled. The mules heard him. They began to pull. They pulled so hard until they were down on their knees pulling, because they knew that a new man had shown up in that woods, and they knew what time of day it was. I told my daddy, I said I had been trying to get them to pull that log for over an hour. And he said, well, they don't understand you yet because you have not taken command of the situation. And so we learn these lessons, and they are lessons that we got to learn today. We got to learn the lesson of survival. We got to learn the lesson of sharing. We got to learn the lesson of being ethical with commitment and those kinds of things. You know, our fathers and forefathers sent us off to college so that we could get a better education than they had. Now, somewhere along the line, that better education transferred into less skills. Our boys and girls had more skills before we went to college than we did after we graduated from college. Many of us find ourselves now graduating from college without a marketable skill. You know, college ought to be about preparing you to make a living. And so somewhere along the lines, we lost that. Now college is about your ability to pontificate and articulate and do poetry and things of that nature, as opposed to learning how to build a house, build a car. That's right, build a car. How to build roads and bridges and things of that nature. And we're suffering for that today. So we got to get back and kind of move this clock backwards a little bit so that we prepare ourselves for what lies ahead. Now, difficult times lie ahead because we're now reached a point where education has failed us, that we're no longer able to feed ourselves, to be able to take care of our family if we don't have a job. And anyone that subscribes to have a job subscribes to be vulnerable at all times to the person that employed them. And when you deal in a state that has a history of being biased and a great deal of bigotry and racism, as we do in Mississippi, you might find yourself not faring well as an employee. And so you better be able to provide yourself with another means of earning and making a living. Now, you can do that one of two ways. One is that you can relieve yourself of the desires and ambitions of having nice things. If you don't want anything, you don't have to do much. If that ambition is on you and it was put into you by your parents, then you have to go get it. Every morning, I look at the sun as it's rising, and I know that it's time for me to get my tack hammer and my chisel and go to the mountain to see what I can get done. It's not that I want to do it, it's I have to do it. And when trouble comes, as trouble always does come, I find myself wrapping myself in my work. The harder I work, the less grieving that I have to do. I remember on the day that my mother passed, and it was a very difficult day for me. And of course, the only thing I could think of I could do, because I had learned during that whole process that there is absolutely nothing you can do. It's all in God's hands, and if He doesn't save her or you, then there's absolutely nothing you can do. So what did I do on that day when I found myself completely helpless? I went to work, and I worked all day, and I worked harder than ever before. Sometimes your mind has to be put on something other than what's bothering you. And I find myself doing that today, and I find myself realizing that even on a tractor bush hogging, that it can be solace there, that you have some time to think and reflect. You have some time to offer up prayers and to show and demonstrate your gratefulness for the few things that you've been able to do and enjoy in this life. And so, you know, we're going to talk about these kinds of things as we bring this studio back online. It's been offline now for about 30 days, and we're looking forward to getting all of our wonderful participants back in the studio, and so that we can once again bring you the kind of information that's relevant, that's meaningful, that you won't get anywhere else. We're not a site that deals with the trivial adversities in life. We are a site that deals with those things that you're faced with every day. I'm reminded that when I go into church on Sunday morning, I go in there anticipating getting something that will help me deal with the issues that will certainly arise the coming week, and to give thanks for having survived the issues that I came through the week before. And so we must get something tangible out of our service and out of life in itself. Now, I want to move on now to some issues that are happening here in the Jackson community. The political season has just kicked off. Traditionally, we will find that those that have aspirations for running for the highest seat in Jackson, which would be the mayor's office, would make their announcement at least by July 1st. And that is because it's a 6-month run. It's a 6-month run into January. And then you have another 3 months there to decide whether or not you're going to continue. If you feel like you've got enough name recognition and name ID, and the people know who you are, and your signs are still where you put them, they haven't been destroyed by other candidates, certainly they will be, then you make that decision in January as to whether or not you can continue in this race. Now, some 12 to 15 candidates will offer themselves up for the highest office in this city sometime before the month of July. In January, you will probably find that at least 8 to 10 of those candidates will drop out of the race, either because they don't have the money, they have been talked about so badly by others in the community, which gets extremely ugly during the political season. They have been talked about in a manner that their family won't allow them to continue, even though they have had an impeccable reputation in the community and they have deacons in their churches, but the lies and the untold truths that will be put upon them as they offer themselves up as a candidate will be unbearable. And only the real thick-skinned individuals will be able to go on and go forward. Now, during the next 90 days, then the race will really get heated up. The field will narrow, and the race will get really heated up. Now, just some of the names that have currently been mentioned, or they've either announced already, or they will be announcing for the highest office in Jackson. Let me just start out with the current incumbent, Mayor Chokwe Antar Lumumba, has announced that he is going to run for re-election. And certainly an incumbent has certain advantages over the rest of the field. You see, an incumbent has had the benefit of building relationship with the business community over the last 4 years, and with the homeowners presidents and the constituencies out there, they've had the opportunity to put many perks in those communities that ought to garner some favor for them. Sometimes, running on your record can be devastating. And clearly in Jackson, Mississippi, our current mayor, is challenged with running on his record about crime, because crime remains at an all-time high in the Jackson, Mississippi area. But that aside, the incumbent is certainly favored as one of the candidates to be considered the guy to beat. And this traditionally holds true for incumbents in any race. And so the mayor has announced. Then next, we've had 2 city council people that have expressed their interest in running for the highest office in the city, and that being Councilman Aaron Banks and councilwoman Angelique Lee. Now, these 2 have not run for mayor before. Now, Council President Aaron Banks has considered running before on the last election, and just on the last day, he eventually pulled out. And I'm certain that he pulled out of that race based upon the advice of friends and family, and decided to not run this last term. But this term, he says that he's absolutely committed to the process and that his name is on the ballot. And according to him, that the polls indicate that he is a very viable candidate and could be polling at the top of the list. The next council person, Angelique Lee, is certainly a young lady that has strengths that no other candidate can claim. And that is, she is a female. And Jackson has not had a female mayor ever in its history, and Angelique Lee, who has demonstrated that she has campaign skills. She sharpened her tools working in the campaign for Commissioner Willie Simmons, and many thought that that was a race that an African-American could not win. But she was able to help him move through that and navigate through that, and Commissioner Simmons became the first African-American mayor to hold that seat as the central district commissioner for the Mississippi Department of Transportation. So Angelique Lee then went on to defeat a very experienced politician and a guy that had been sheriff in Hinds County. As a matter of fact, he was the first black sheriff that we'd ever had. He wasn't the first one to run, but he was the first one to ever get elected, Tyrone Lewis. And Angelique was able to dispose of Tyrone handedly in the run for Ward 2 City Council seat. So she's demonstrated some skills in campaigning and understands this political game. Also, she's educated with a master's degree in criminal justice or in communications and things of that nature, in the things in the education that teach you on how to run schools and cities and things of that nature. So those three are the people that are currently enjoying the elected positions. They have a following. That's how they got elected the first time around. And so they are considered serious contenders. Now, the next young man that I saw just this morning out working hard was Marcus Wallace. Marcus enjoys a lot of favor with me because his father and I were very close. His father, the late Jerry Owens, was one of the greatest guys of all times that ever came through the state of Mississippi. And many of us look at him as the premier business person that came through the African-American ranks. Now, I know there are a lot of the folk out there would want to take me to task on that because we have all of the Banks family over there and the Stewart's family over there, and we have all of these McCoys, and we have these Turners, and we have all of these wonderful families. I get that. But Jerry Owens was a little bit different. He's a little bit special. He could sell ice cream to Eskimos. He could sell air conditioning units to Eskimos. He was a fearless competitor. We call him Mississippi Junior. I love the guy. That's why I'm going on and on and on. But his son Marcus also has made his own mark in that he ran for and became mayor in the small town of Edwards. So Marcus has mayoral experience. He's been a mayor, so he understands that office, and he has offered himself up for this position. And I know that Marcus possessed the same tenacity that his father has. He's got the same outlook. He believes in the African-American business community like maybe no one else in this race. And I say that because he has been a contractor. He understands the difficulty of the black business community. And certainly he would have that as his number one priority as to how do we change the status quo when it comes to economics within the African-American community. We continue to suffer in that arena like no other state in the union. When you're an African-American business person, in the poorest state in the nation, you got a double whammy. You got to really demonstrate some skills to be able to survive. And if you survive, we give you an excellent. But if you survive and flourish, we say that you are a miracle worker. And so Marcus knows that, and he will be focusing on the tremendous challenge of leveling the playing field when it comes to African-American business. Now, I'm about out of time for this segment, but I'll come back even later on today or tomorrow, and we'll talk about the rest of these candidates. Now, I will just name a few so that you can begin to think right along with me. The seasoned Senator John Horn's name has been mentioned as a candidate for this office. Everybody knows Senator Horn. He is one of the top senators in the African-American community, having been there for a number of years, probably the oldest ranking senator in the state right now from the African-American perspective. So he is mentioned as a candidate for this office. Also, we have Councilman Kenny Stokes. Now, I should have brought up Kenny Stokes before I left the city government, because Kenny makes the third council person that has demonstrated a following, that he has a following that wants him to apply for this office. Now, he has talked about running for the mayor's office on numerous times before, but he shared with me in the past that he knows he can win this office. He says, but his family thinks that he's given enough and that it would just take too big of a toll on his health. You know, he recently lost his wife, and he is guarded very closely by his children, and they are trying to keep him from getting in this race. But like the warrior that he is, he has not said that he is not running. And if he does run, what he has told me, that winning this mayoral race depends upon whether or not you can win wards. He said, now you can be in this race, but you got to tell him what wards can you win. And certainly when it comes to Kenny Stokes, we know that he has identified several wards that he could win, and able to identify that probably better than anybody else, because no one is going to unseat him in his current Ward 3. And so to the extent that that flows over to 4 and 5, then, you know, he's got to be considered a major contender. So Councilman Kenny Stokes' name is there as well. Then we have my friend Bradley Lum. Bradley Lum is the white candidate that Bradley and I spoke on the last 4 years. He sought comfort in running for this office 4 years ago, and I had to be very candid with him in that discussion, and that is that it is unlikely that a white person in a 98%, somebody says not that high, 89%, reverse those numbers, black city, that a white person could be elected. And I believe that. And I believe that 4 years ago, more than anything in the world, I thought it would be just impossible to see that happen again. That took me back to the days of Tarzan. And I just couldn't see how a white man could do that in this city. That was 4 years ago. Now, times have changed a bit now, and we see that black folk in our community, when asked about a white candidate, they say they don't care. They say they want somebody that will be able to move the city forward. And so race in the African-American community, and this is interesting, race in the African-American community is not as important as it is in the white community. The white community continues to vote in a block, all white. In the African-American community, we are poised now, as happened in Memphis, Tennessee, as happened up in Leland, Mississippi, and Greenville, Greenwood, all of those areas that moved toward even Mount Bayou, the cradle of the black civilization, and the cradle of the Mississippi black Delta population went with a white mayor. And so Mississippians are saying that a white person has a chance this time. And so Bradley Lum, if he comes and talks with me again on this occasion, I would not be able to give him the same emphatic message that no white person could win this office going forward. But Bradley Lum is an interesting guy that has done a lot of great work in this city, and he's offered himself up for mayor. Then there is my friend Leroy Walker. Leroy Walker's name is always coming up when it comes to mayor. We know that he is a statesman. We know that he has done wonderful things in this city. He was a grand entrepreneur, had more than 14 McDonald's hamburger operations going on at one time in the state, the largest block of ownership of McDonald's of anybody in the state. That he is a young man that was past chairman of the Greater Jackson Chamber of Commerce. He serves on the board of Trustmark. He serves on the board of Energy. He works in the workforce development arena. He's on a popular talk show with Jim Evans over on Straight Talk on Sunday mornings. He's a great orator, a great speaker, a great family man. He has all of the credentials and requirements to make a great campaign run for this office. He has but one real issue that he doesn't seem to be able to get around, And that's similar to Kenny Stokes. His family says that they don't want him to run. And so it is kind of difficult because we know how ugly this thing gets out here. When your family is not committed to you running, then you find yourself at a tremendous disadvantage when the mudslinging and the name calling and the lies and the innuendos, all of those things start to surface. Then the family is looking at you and asking, why did you put us in this? We were doing extremely fine, minding our own business. Why would you do that? And so that is the great challenge for Mr. Leroy Walker. Trust he'll pray about that. I know many of us have talked to him about offering himself up for mayor, and so we'll see what happens this year. Finally, for this show, there's a gentleman out here now by the name of Mr. Henderson. He is a lieutenant colonel that seemed to be making a lot of noise. I haven't had an opportunity to meet with him yet. I've certainly been called upon by his office, and I plan on meeting with him shortly. But Mr. Henderson is making a lot of noise. Now, he's got impeccable credentials as a lieutenant colonel, and you got the great training, some of the same training that first African-American mayor, Harvey Johnson, I believe he was a captain. So Colonel Henderson says that he has the skills sets, he has the temperament, he has the knowledge, and he has the backing to become the next mayor of the city of Jackson. So I look forward to meet with him, learning more about his plans, but I do know that he has the most impressive field game in the street right now of all of the candidates. I do know that he is building a tremendous organization that will give him the advantages that he needs to overcome name identity. And so that's what he's going to have to work on. He's going to have to get out there to make people know him in a short period of time. Many times that can be a disadvantage for a candidate that's just moving into the area. But Lieutenant Colonel Henderson, I look forward to meeting with you. Now, we're going to talk about the qualifications required for this office when we come back and continue this discussion. But this has been Socratess Garrett Live with a special broadcast coming to you from Jackson, Mississippi, in an African-American owned and operated studio. Our program is being seen on Facebook. We want you to subscribe. We're being seen on YouTube. We want you to subscribe there as well on Instagram. And you can be seeing this program in over 139 countries all over this world. Until we get back to you, we want you to stay safe and have a good evening. Good day. Good evening. I'm Socratess Garrett, and we're broadcasting live from right here in Jackson, Mississippi, the heart of the Deep South, right here in the African-American owned broadcasting studio. We believe digital.com, our own platform. And so it's critically important that in the African-American community, we control the narrative. I look forward to receiving opportunities to show and advertise your products for goods and services and to move your brand along in this community. We're broadcasting live on Facebook. When We Believe Digital Podcast, go to Roku and download our app, and We Believe Global, with shows like this to bring articulate, intelligent conversations and dialogue to our platform. So I'm here to continue sounding the alarm. This is how the South is going to rise again. Yeah.